All right. Good morning, Kid of Prosperity. It is Friday, which means it's our MREI call. I'm here with Megan, Kurt, Dana, and Mary Beth, as always, every Friday. Thanks for coming on again this Friday with us. I was thinking, Mary Beth, as you jumped out of the screen, I was thinking we could continue the conversation. Yes, the MREI. I thought we could continue the conversation we ended on last week because I just wanted to hear an update on your situation with the property that you were looking at, and just to kind of, put a bow on that.
Sure. So where was I when we were talking? Did I go look at the property? I looked at the property in the morning, right?
Yeah.
And then we went through all of those numbers with the marker, and we got to the point that we figured we would throw $80,000 in construction. Holding and closing costs were like $26,000 and $8,000, so like 30. It was $113,000 in, and yet the 113 also represented some real estate commission and a full year of taxes. So there might have been some that we probably could have pulled out that wasn't true expense. So we assessed that we would put a $85,000 offer, so that all in would be about $200,000. To churn it out for a $300,000 safe sale. And then we were able to call the city, the contractor that we work with, who would be a partner, had some connections with the city. So we called there to see if we could turn that single family into a two-family. It actually had 3 boxes, if you remember. And what he found out was that the third one is definitely no, but with the square footage of being almost 2,000 square feet and the electric box is already there, plus across the street being that there was multiple housing, he didn't see that it would be an issue to get the variance, but yet it would still be a process. So although emotionally, guys, I was like, oh, maybe we could just go a little bit more, because I was listening to Megan and Kurt in the back of my head, and I was thinking, nope, I'm not doing it. So they came back at us and said highest and best. And he also said, if this is your best, then just go ahead and say that. So I just said, with the research that we did, it is zoned only a single family. There would have to be work to go two family. With that being said, we're leaving at 85. And he has no answer yet. It is through Carrington Mortgages LLC.
Oh, they're
so
slow.
What?
They're slow.
I kind of remember them. I was asking Dana, how do I remember them?
They're everywhere. I mean, they're just an asset manager, but they're very slow.
Yeah. So I then asked the guy, because now I'm trying to make relationships, because I'm hearing what we're talking about, and so I just asked him if he has anything else that comes in around our area, because I know he's not from our area. He's just picking up foreclosures with his company. He works for them. And he was like, yeah, sure. So, who knows? One of the agents in our office who was tight in with an REO is Karen Ledwith. And I know that she gets properties sometimes that before they even hit the market, and has them go under contract because of a relationship with agents. So I guess trying to build that group of agents as well in Dana and I's area, because we're in the Middlesex pocket, and also from the experience of Kurt and Meg and others, just thinking today on the wealth building call with Mark King, is making sure that property is near us so that it's manageable, so being in that Middlesex pocket would be important for our investment portfolio.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, so Mary Beth, with that, I thought we could transition towards something, or pivot a little bit towards something else. I know yesterday I really liked your post on Facebook where you were like, are you planning on staying in New Jersey? Where would you go?
Oh.
And I thought, you had a ton of comments on that. And
oh
one of
my
them
gosh.
I saw Kurt had commented just saying that he's going to look in New York City once prices bottom out.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to kind of pivot over to that conversation when we're looking at the MREI and we're talking about like the acquisition model and really focusing on buying right. What does that necessarily mean? So like Kurt and Megan, like when you're talking about, or Kurt specifically, about New York City bottoming out, what are you looking for? When will you know that the time is right?
Sure. So obviously we know New York because we know New York to a degree. Meg was licensed there. We lived there for a while. We were mostly uptown. So Washington Heights, Inwood, Harlem. That's like kind of our hood. We love uptown. It's just kind of, it's cool. It just feels different. It doesn't feel like an outer borough. It doesn't feel like Manhattan. It's got its own vibe. And we saw a huge price increase over the time we were there, which partially pushed us out. We went to the Bronx, and we went to Riverdale, which is like, it's not really the Bronx.
Riverdale, that's where my brother-in-law's from. That's where Keith
it's like
terrible.
bougie Bronx.
It's the Irish section of the Bronx.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, but Dutch, very, very Dutch. So I felt right at home. But we saw the prices go crazy, and we got out, came back to New Jersey and all that stuff. But like any market, there's opportunity, right? So like the people that buy at the Jersey Shore, when do you want to buy? Right after a hurricane rolls through. Like, you hate to say it's terrible, but that's when you want to buy. When do I want to buy in the city? I want to buy now. And people are like, I don't want to be in a subway. I don't want to be in a building with an elevator that I got to be crammed in with everybody with masks. Like, it's a scary time to be there now. Great time to buy.
Yeah. There's so
not
many
think about that.
There's so many restrictions though, as far as like what we would purchase in the city. Like it's a very different type of home that you'd be looking for there. We have very specific guidelines, very specific locations, because it would also be an investment property. We kind of look at everything as like, what's the ROI? I mean, we buy a car and we're like, what's the ROI? Like, we're just like that. Kurt's flipped like 20 cars. I mean, it's insane. So like everything we buy has to have some sort of like return for us. So when we're looking in the city, we're not looking at a co-op necessarily, because the fees are just too extraordinary. And then on top of that, you can't actually rent it. It's usually like 1 year out of every 5, but no 2 consecutive. Like, there's so many rules, and there's so many ways that the co-op board can turn you down for residents, especially if it's a pied-à-terre, second home, anything like that. So we would be looking specifically for a condo, which is the hardest thing to find in New York City, because they're the most desirable, because they don't have restrictions like that. There's no co-op board, there's no co-op fees. I mean, some of these co-op fees are like 5,000 to 15,000, like insane. And if they deny you, that's non-refundable. So that is the issue with New York City. So we're specifically looking for a condo building that's a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment, that's got an elevator, that allows dogs, that allows us to rent it out. Like, there's so many particulars with the city, that it's not just like, oh yeah, the sky's the limit, because there's so many buildings, but 80% of them are co-ops. So you're really only looking at like a 20% pocket of condo buildings. So I think when we're talking about New York City real estate, it's just so different than out here. It's like, oh, is it a 2-family? Cool. Well, great. There's not really a whole lot of parameters, whereas the city, there's just those different types of ownership. Buildings. Yeah, if that makes sense. Just to kind of narrow down our New York situation.
Yeah, with a co-op, I mean, they could deny you just for any reason. My sister and brother-in-law were denied in a co-op just because they didn't like the price on it. They didn't want that to affect the value of what their units were worth. So they just clear out, denied them. No reason, no explanation. And so then if you have an asset like that, you don't want to have that problem that when you're turning around to sell it, it's going to be dependent on people that own units in there.
Exactly. So we're waiting for that to come down.
I think you're driving at an interesting point, Meg, that really kind of, no matter where we're going, right? Like, you're looking for multifamilies, you're looking for condos. We're trying to get the highest, we're trying to climb the tree. We're trying to get to the most desirable fruit without paying the most for it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If we look at flip potential properties, like, we all know that there's not a lot of them. There's not a lot of really good opportunities. There's not a lot of really good opportunities from a 2-family, 3-family perspective. You got to know what you're looking for. You got to wait for the right opportunity. I think there's a little bit of a degree of luck in there too, of being in the right place at the right time when that one dumb agent puts it on for the wrong price or something. I don't know.
MLS.
Yeah, wrong MLS.
Yeah.
They're at an area, and you're like, oh, okay, thank you.
But it's no matter where you're looking,
that's
it's always
important.
going to be like that.
Yeah, and I think that's important is we tend to buy things when we're not looking, if that makes sense, because we're always looking. But we don't like to be under the gun of like, you have to find something. So I think that's the key with any real estate investing is you're always looking, but at the same time, you're not desperate ever to find a place. And I think that's when we find our best deals. You know, we actually almost bought a studio in the city last year, but the numbers were just, we were trying to make them work and it just was not working. And luckily we didn't buy that because we were then able to buy multiple other properties in New Jersey that would returned way better. But we're constantly looking, and it's just being patient and waiting for that right deal to come through. And then when it does, having the ability to jump. If that makes sense.
And I want to hear from Dana on this, because I know this is right up her alley, these multiple doors under one roof. Oh my goodness, I was just thinking something.
Yeah, Dana, how do you know? I mean, obviously that's a much more squeezed market.
Yes.
How do you identify those deals? How do they come across? Like, I wouldn't even know where to begin there.
Yeah, I mean, I have, just for example, I have an agent in Atlanta who is doing a deep dive into a couple of products, just like you have your criteria, right? It has to be, these criteria, my top 5, like your top 5 must-haves, basically the list you just ran through. And, yes, do we want it local? That would be amazing. However, I'm not opposed to Atlanta. I have family there, and I can create opportunity for them to say, hey, here, you want to manage this here in your backyard? It's actually giving opportunity for my family. By the way, the original crux of the idea to have multiple units and the least number of roofs was just to mitigate cost of one of the most pricey things that a property typically warrants. So it wasn't really for any other reason, like, oh, it's a sexy idea to have multiple units. No, I mean, in some cases, but it was just to mitigate the cost of like the most pricey thing of a property, especially when you hold it long term. So,
I mean, not only that too, there's a lot of infrastructure that is used for multiple units, furnaces and boilers or whatnot. So there's a lot of things that they could be sharing in a common way. So I see that point. I just know that that's part of what you'd like to build in your portfolio.
Right. So, Atlanta is something, I mean, I'm flirting with is, and it's going to sound crazy. My son is 8.5 and he believes he's going to MIT, and MIT is in Cambridge, Massachusetts. But guess what? If I were to identify with an agent there, a lucrative, even if it's like a little 1 family, 2 family, I don't care, something in that geographic footprint. Best case scenario is when, 10 years he moves there and it's 100% equity, right? Or just nearing that. And if he doesn't and creates an app and becomes a multimillionaire and doesn't have to, then I have an investment property in a really awesome zip code, right? So I just think that sometimes, I don't know, just future pacing yourself. What was the original question, Kurt?
No, whatever, you got to the right answer. I don't care what the question was. No, I love that. I think, we're in investment. We're investing in real estate in order to future plan anything. And, as Meg and I are heading into parenthood, that's something that we're actively thinking about too. And like, how are we going to help her understand that her job is to, I want her to enjoy everything that she does and find a passion and whatever, Meg and I both did that, but understand like you're not like, our parents said, do the thing you love and you'll never work a day in your life, which is crap. But but what they didn't
love
say,
them, but it's crap.
what they didn't say, even though they're both of our parents are successful, but they're not wealth driven. They're not driven, but they're not wealth building. They're income building. And that's something I want to pass down to her is like, you can do anything you want as long as you're continuing to build wealth. You want to go be a professional drummer and tour the world? All good. As long as you can build wealth in the process, all your doors are open at that point. So, your son may, it's like, listen, dude, you could do anything you want. You can develop an app, you can tech startup, whatever. But like, as long as you have like, don't let that distract from the real core of building wealth, because you can do whatever you want. You don't know what you're going to be like when you're 30, when you're 40, when you're 50, when you're 60. You don't know what those things bring,
Yeah. Something that I heard this week on the Win, Make, Give Wealth series around that was, back in 2009, if you purchased, and scream if you've heard this, if you purchased an iPod that was about $399, the product itself, versus purchasing Apple stock back then, it would be worth, right, $53,000 today.
Yeah, that was a hard number. That was
I immediately cleared out my Amazon cart and priced out a share of Amazon. It's $2,400.
Well, to that point, I want to ask you, I was talking, Godfrey had just said that the night before, like, what about stocks? What if we had bought Amazon? Like, we were talking about different companies, and then you say to me, you're thinking about buying the share of Amazon. Are you guys in the stock market?
We're not.
No.
You're not.
Good for you.
And
You know
what?
We're not either.
You sell real estate. Okay.
We just watched my parents like lose hundreds of thousands of dollars in the stock market, literally hundreds, and it's like
it's the mindset though.
Well,
It's
I've heard that if you don't have a passion for the stock market, you're not gonna like be able to. If you're not passionate about it and you don't have a pulse on it, then there's no reason to put your eggs in that basket.
Yeah. I mean, we have a friend that makes a ton of money on the stock market. Like he trades all the time, and but that's his passion, and that is not our passion.
But he has to, in order to be good at it, he's picking up his phone every day and checking stock prices. Yep. Not every day. He's picking it up like I pick up Instagram. He's picking up his stock prices, and that's honestly the amount of times that I look at, like Meg said, I don't flip cars, but I've like never lost money on a car.
Literally never.
I know what these things cost. I look every time a new BMW M3 goes for sale. I know what they all sell for. I know what they're all worth. You got to be that passionate about it.
Yeah.
I don't have that kind of focus, so it's only going to be real estate. I'm never going to buy it.
My underlying theme though is long-term plays. Whether it's in real estate or frankly stocks. I will say I have not taken a hit like other people, 100 that no. I Berkshire Hathaway, that's not evaporating. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, the Abbott Laboratories, they're not going away because they make Vicks. Do you know what I mean? So there's certain plays that are long-term and safe, but no, I'm not.
Who makes Windex? Let's get in there.
Seriously.
You mean Purell?
Yeah, hand sanitizer.
So, but to this conversation, Mark King was actually talking about this exact thing. Is he started this morning with, what are you passionate about? What are your hobbies? And start to write them in the chat, because if you're going to diversify your portfolio, let's say, like we're just talking about, and Kurt specifically knows cars, well, you're a student of cars. That's why you can go ahead and make an investment in a car. If you're a student of stock, then you'll know when, oh my gosh, it went down. Like, I wouldn't know if it went down or up or whatnot. And we're students of real estate, so that's why, I mean, it's one of the most lucrative, but that's where we should put our investment. And that's why we're talking about this. One thing that came up when Dana was talking is college towns. That is super smart, and we should be looking at that. We have a lot of college towns in New Jersey specifically, but to Dana's point is, if your child has expressed interest in going elsewhere, then maybe it would be in your best interest to buy a property there, have it rented out, and then when the child is there, it's equity, it's all equity, or they could actually rent it with roommates, and you could have positive cash flow, and hey, there's their spending money, okay? Put Sergio to work.
And books.
And then the other thing was, when Megan was talking, I was just thinking about how when you are always looking for the right investment, you don't have to feel that I got to make the investment. I got to buy an investment, because you're coming from abundance, not scarcity. And it's like relationships. If we, well, Kurt's really good looking guy. I'll take him. We're settling. Just kidding. But let's just say you meet him and you just settle real fast, because I don't want to feel the fear of not having something tomorrow. And then you didn't get the best thing ever. But look at you. You got both things. You got him when he was young, and you got him forever.
I appreciate you using me for the less desirable comparison. That's awesome.
It's a great point. It's like a super great point, Mary Beth. I feel like it reminds me of positioning, and it's really back to Megan's original point. It's making sure you're positioned and capitalized, frankly, so that when the great deal or investment opportunity surfaces, you're prepared and ready. It's not, oh, I found a deal, now I have to, ideally, it's not, I found it, now I have to go and like, you know, shake a tree or figure out how to fund it. You're already capitalized and poised and positioned.
Well, I appreciate this group here because it positioned me to go ahead and make that offer last week.
Finally.
And I'm not attached to you, finally.
And
I'm not attached to it.
Though. A lot of people, you've grown up in real estate though, which is great. So you've been positioning yourselves in other manners. Some people are like, they want it so bad, they see it on HGTV and it looks so attractive and delicious and it's solved in a 27-minute episode, and we know it's not like that.
It all comes down to education though. It all comes down to making sure people are educated on that. On my way here, I was listening to Power 105, which is funny because I don't really listen to hip hop, but DJ Envy's on it, who I find fascinating. The dude is brilliant and he's fascinating. But he was talking about, he's got, you know, he's selling a seminar, his real estate investing seminars, and like I get it. That's like, he's very successful at his hustle, and so you can educate people on your hustle.
Is that what's fascinating about him?
No, what I like, well, he's just fascinating because he's got a lot of stuff going on. He's very multifaceted. He's a true entrepreneur, very, very smart guy, and seems to have an awesome marriage too, which I totally admire, especially, you know, in music, in the music industry, somebody that like really cares about their wife. That's really cool. But he's talking about educating people to understand how to invest in their neighborhood and, you know, in different areas, because like, you know, you said college town. If I had invested in the city of Orange when I went to Seton Hall, I mean, South Orange is too far gone.
You just alerted the girl.
I'm a pirate.
Are you really?
97 to
Megan, it's over. It's over.
All right.
I got married at the campus chapel. Apologies for the digression.
Oh, cool.
That's cool.
I am a pirate. That's where I met Gerald, and we have pirates. Yeah.
They have pirate friends. All their friends are pirates.
Love it.
Why didn't we buy something in the rolling hills of South Orange in 2001?
When it was
You were like 10, but still.
I know. But like by the time I got there, South Orange was too far gone. But I remember driving from Kinnelon down 280, and you get off at Center Street, and you drive through the hood. And I got, when I was a freshman, some guy came up to my car and tried to like carjack me. But I had the doors locked, and I hadn't been there, honestly. I didn't like really paid attention in like 10 years. And I went back to campus at one point for something at the radio station. And it was like, and I'm driving down Center Street, and I'm like, I get to Center and Central, which used to be nasty. And I'm like, people figure this out. It's a very close, commutable town. It's great. It's close to everything. It's just a matter of time. These things turn. So seeing those opportunities, it's really cool. So anyway, that was my DJ Envy's, like, invest in your community. If you're, you know, getting people to own one property, that, you know, we talk about people that are the first people to go to college, the first people to own property. It's like, that's sick. That's sick. I love it.
Preach.
Sorry.
Okay.
I wish I would have bought something there in 2001.
Seriously.
Yeah.
So I think what we can do, because it's almost coming to the 11:30, it's 11:26, and I want to go past our time together because I want to make sure we continue this, because it's really just that 30 minutes of focus weekly, and we're hoping to really create a little following too, so we inspire some people to take some action. To Dana's point, that Win, Make, Give podcast, there is also a Win, Make, Give group. Ben Kinney has basically laid out Dana, what is it, $600 course for free? Yeah. So it's been amazing because it's an 8-session, and it's literally telling us to do activities that we're all talking about right now, our net worth activity, our budget activity, and we're going to get into some other stuff because 3 came out today. So I'll just encourage you to get there and get on with us as well. Another thing is I'm going to look through this book here, and Matt and I will decide on some pages that we can go through for next week, because there's some real tactical, boring stuff in here that is foundational to investing. That if you don't know some of this language, and if you don't know what some of these terms mean or how to come to some of these formulas, then, you know, you're not going to do your clients or yourself any service. So that's what I think I'd like to focus on next week. If we could just, you know, mastermind before that.
We'll
All right.
connect this week. So yeah, well, thank you guys for, you know, doing this, and we'll continue into June, a week from today.
Sweet.
I
June.
know.
Oh my goodness.
All
All
right.
right. Bye guys. Have a lovely
Bye,
weekend.
guys.